Hi, Magic Movie Recaps here. Today I am going to explain a movie called Valmont. Madame de Villages and her cousin the Marquise de Merchwil arrive at the convent for maidens to visit Sasau. The young and charming Cécile Divalange sings in the choir and leaves the right way of life as a virgin and pure girl. She knows that her mother is going to marry her off and asks Madame Myrtle if this is true. Upon learning that everything is really so, girl asks her to find out the name of her future husband. Merchwil tries to do this, but Madame de Villages hides the name of her daughter's future husband since he himself asked her about it. At the same time, woman asks a socialite and a widow to take care of raising her daughter so that Cecil is not only innocent but also a wise girl with the right manners. In the evening, Merchwil goes with the young Cecil to the opera where she teaches her how to hold the fan correctly and behave decently. Having met the Viscount de Valmont, girl does not remove her hand, and woman says that this is not worth doing because she gives man a chance to get to know her better. When communicating with him, she should be courteous and polite but not give empty and false hopes. Little understanding of etiquette. Cecile invites Velma to watch the opera with them, but Mergiel asks man to leave them as soon as he leaves. Woman tells that Viscount is a terrible man who can ruin the girl's reputation and should be kept as far away as possible. A little later, Velman announces that he is leaving Paris to visit his elderly aunt Madame de Rosamond. Cecil still does not understand what questions to ask and asks Myrtle if the man is her lover. That evening, Myrtle spends night with Mansour Court. When man is about to leave, the mistress asks how soon they will meet again. Jurcourt ignores the question, explaining that he is very busy and has no time for dates in the coming days. A few days later, the nobles gather at Madame de Villeneuve's house for a concert during which Cecil will sing and play with harp. Earl knows that her husband will be among those present and asks Merchwil to find out his name. The socialite reconnects with her cousin and meets young Cecile's fiancée. Woman is shocked because it turns out to be her lover Jurcourt, who pretended to see Myrtle for the first time. She is offended by this attitude and leaves the event ahead of time. Soon Merchwil arrives at the country mansion of the barons and meets with the elderly Rosamond, who fell asleep during a card game. Meanwhile, Valmont is trying to woo Madame de Tourvel, who is carefully faithful to her husband. Man is busy and works in another city, so Tourvel is forced to dutifully wait for him while visiting the Baron and Baroness. Valmont confesses his love to the girl, but he is refused. Unable to bear this, man throws himself into the water, which frightens Tourvel and his servant, who rushed to his aid. Noticing that everything is fine with Valmont, girl leaves and he is forced to swim to the servant as he began to sink. Meeting with Valmont, Merchwil asks man to return to Paris to seduce the young Cecil. Socialite decided to take revenge on her lover Jurcourt and wants the professional womanizer to do his job and become the first man for Cecile. She is sure that this will offend Jurcourt because he most of all appreciates her innocence in his future wife. Velman is flattered by such an offer but refuses as he is in love with the charming Madame de Tourvel. In the evening during dinner, Merchwil decides to provoke a married woman into an open conversation. She repeatedly hints at Velman's sympathy for her and checks girl's reaction to this. The Baroness, Merchwil and even old Rosamond admit that they would not refuse to spend the night with handsome Valmont if they had such an opportunity. Tourvel is not able to do the same since she has a husband, and replies that decency and loyalty are important to her. Merchwil is surprised that Velman is trying to woo such a modest person and invites him to abandon her because he will never spend the night with this girl. Without doubting his strength, the man offers a bet if he achieves his goal with Madame de Tourvel, Merchwil will spend the night with him, and if not, he will go to the monastery and repent of his sins, sprinkling ashes on his head as soon as everyone goes to bed. Valmont goes to the Baroness's bedroom to spend the night with her. A couple of days later, Merchwil returns to Paris and meets with Cecile's mother. The woman is outraged by her daughter's behavior and tells that she keeps secrets in her chiffonier. Madame de Volanges opened it and found letters From Density, a guy teaching a young lady how to play with harpal offers help and communicates with Cecile to make sure that girl is in love with her teacher. As soon as the young lady runs to the living room to bring her letters, Virtual follows her and learns that girl hides letters in the strings of the harp, covering it with a cover. She decides to use the love of the innocent Cell to spoil the future marriage of her lover Durcourt. She helps girl write a romantic letter to Density and comfort her mother by telling her all the details during the next class. Madame de Vellinges notices how the teacher hides letter in the harp and kicks him out of the house, which greatly upsets her daughter. Continuing to implement his insidious plan, Virtual helps the couple keep secret correspondence and decides to arrange a meeting for them. She tells Cecil how to behave and offers to run away from home as soon as she and her mother go to the opera. Women leave and young girl goes on a date with Duncani. Virtual thought of everything and her servant helps Cecile put on a revealing outfit. Leaving the couple alone, the social aids assistant left the room and began to spy on the couple. Young and stupid Danceny, instead of spending the night with his beloved, teaches her to play the harp. Madame de Valonges decides to take pity on her daughter, whom she put under house arrest, and hurries home, realizing that the plan can be exposed. Virtual hurries to Cecile and takes her to the opera so that her mother does not find out about the meeting with music teacher. Madame de Vellinges is thinking about returning her daughter to the convent before the wedding day, but Virtual comes up with a better idea and goes with Cecile to the countryside to the Baron's estate. Meanwhile, Valmont continues to try to find a way to Madame de Tourvel's heart. He invites her to go hunting and lures her on a romantic date in a garden full of food and musicians playing just for the two of them. All this touched the girl, but she is not ready to succumb to the charms of an experienced womanizer. In addition, Madame de Tourvel received a letter in which an anonymous person advises to stay away from Valmont because he wants to use her like other women. Viscount is unable to justify himself and simply leaves, declaring that his feelings for her are sincere. At this time in Paris, the young Danceny is being selected for the regiment of Durcourt. He, unlike other guys, brilliantly wields his sword and is respected by Monsieur Jurcourt. Knowing that this man must marry his beloved Cecile, the music teacher refuses and leaves Valmont as the only man entertains the ladies present in the country house. He spends a lot of time with Cecile and plays with her, imitating a duel. Tourvel watches man curiously and asks Virtual her opinion of him. She says that Valmont is ideal for a brother but worse for a future husband. Noticing that married girl is in love with him, Virtual invites her to leave as soon as possible, but Tourvel refutes her assumptions. In the evening after dancing, Madame de Tourvel invites Velma to her room. She admits that she is in love and simply cannot leave because she wants to be with him. Realizing that this is wrong, she asks this count to leave the estate and leave her alone. Myrtle invites Valmont to help Ciccio write a love letter to Destiny. He agrees and retires with a young girl dictating the text of the letter. At some point, man decides to seduce Cecile and becomes the first man for a charming girl. After that, the young lady hurries to Madame de Virtual and tells about what happened. She is completely confused in feelings and does not know what to do. Virtual offers not to cancel the marriage and become wife of Durcourt while making a lover out of dancing. In the morning, Madame de Vellinges arrives at the Baron's estate to pick up her daughter. Velman intervenes in the women's conversation and reproaches Cecile's mother for forcibly marrying a girl to a man 3 times her age. The dispute cannot be resolved, and those gathered at the table decide to ask Cecile's opinion. The knave girl, believing that this is right, confirms her readiness to become wife of Durcourt on the condition that Danceny becomes her lover. Mother is outraged by this confession and forces her to immediately return to Paris upon learning that Madame de Tourvel has left for Paris. Valmont hurriedly follows her and ends up in the girl's house before her seeing the man she fell in love with. Mary Tourvel is unable to resist her desires and spends the night with a womanizer. In the morning she tells him that she wrote and sent her husband a letter of recognition and is also ready to serve Valmont in everything. While girl went to the market for food, the Viscount fled, leaving a farewell letter. He thought he was capable of loving and being with one, but he realized that he was wrong. Returning to the estate of the barons, Valmont meets with Mertuel and tells that he won the argument and spent the night with Madame de Tourvel. She refuses to admit losing the argument, but Man insists on his own because this is a matter of honor. Mertuel behaves inappropriately and provokes Valmont's anger, as a result of which he declares war on the woman and overturns the bath in which she was lying. Viscount decides to help Cecil and Dancing by becoming an intermediary in their correspondence. Girl is ready to write letters, but on the condition that it will not be the same as last time, and this will not end with intimacy. On one of these days, Jurcourt comes to Cecil to present a necklace and announce the upcoming wedding. Girl begins to doubt and Valmont changes his plan. He asks Cecile to confess everything to Dancing and offer him the role of a lover because Mertuel advised her so. The indignant music teacher immediately goes to Mertuel and, threatening with his sword, demands to write a letter apology. In the evening, the servant informs Valmont that Madame de Tourvel is waiting for him. He told her that owner was not at home, but girl continued to wait. It is raining outside and Tourvel is completely wet, so Valmont invites her to his house, feeling sympathy and pity for the unfortunate girl. He spends night with her. In the morning, Tourvel runs away, having done the same with Valmont as he did with her. Having bought flowers, the Viscount goes to the house of a married girl and sees that her house is a mess, and her husband, who has returned from a business trip, is in the living room. After that, Valmont heads to Madame de Mertuel's house to apologize to her and reconcile. They are strong personalities for whom are better not to fight, but befriend. Woman also understands this and even confesses her feelings to Valmont, but it soon becomes clear that she is just playing with him. As it turned out, Mertuel told Danceny that the Viscount had become Cecile's first man. Moreover, she did it in order to spend the night with a guy. Valmont is disappointed and hits Woman in the face because she destroys the happiness of a couple in love. Trying to salvage the situation, Viscount buys inconspicuous men's clothing and hurries to the house of Madame d'Ivalonges. The servant does not let him in, but Valmont showers the man with silver coins so that he does not interfere with him. He offers Cecile to change clothes and run away, but it turns out that Mertuel arrived earlier and told girl about everything. She is not ready to run away and will become the wife of Jurcourt. Since Danceny betrayed Cecile and his feelings for her a minute later, Madame de Villages also appears in the room, asking Velma to leave her house once and for all. Upon returning home, Viscount meets Danceny's seconds, reporting that the guy challenged him to a duel and is waiting for a meeting at night. Valmont goes to the nearest tavern and hires 3 drunkards to be his seconds for the next duel. In the morning, he arrives at the meeting place drunk, and this causes indignation. And Danceny guy is not ready to fight with a drunk man and considers it below his dignity. Music teacher invites Viscount to ask for forgiveness and promises to accept the apology. Valmont is outraged by these words because he tried with all his might to help the lovers and he does not need to repent of his actions. Viscount attacks Danceny and his temporary seconds flee, realizing the situation is out of control. As a result of the fight, the young music teacher kills Valmont. A couple of days later, the funeral of a noble womanizer takes place, to which all women who have ever spent the night with him. With the exception of Madame de Tourvel have come. Cecil cries more than the others and confesses to old Madame de Rosamond that she is expecting a child from Valmont. The next day Cecil becomes the wife of d'Urquart in the royal court. Madame de Merchuel is still alone and looks at the others with envy because everyone has found their couples except for her. Madame de Tourvel together with her husband comes to the grave of Valmont to say goodbye to the man whom she loved. And here movie ends. Thank you for watching and see you tomorrow at the same time.